today's topic is, a final expense presentation that works. Again, remember, I've been doing this a long time. I've been in the business now for 20 years. I really feel like it's important to follow a presentation. I think there's a lot of agents out there that are just winging it, that they go into a house, they have a lead, they get in the door, and they don't really know exactly what to say. They're so focused on just face amounts and rates. And it's almost like they think they're selling car insurance or something, where people are just looking for the absolute lowest rate possible. And I think there's just so much more to it. I think that adding value is very important. We do focus on rates, affordability. We're dealing with people primarily that are on a pretty fixed income. So rates do matter. But I think adding that value and focusing on the need. How much do they really need to cover their final expenses? Keep it affordable for the client. You can always add more later. But let's go ahead and get started. And again, I wanted to mention too, these materials that we're going to be going over, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to send you a PDF copy of the presentation. I'd also be happy to send you a copy of the sales script that we're using. So feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be on one of the slides towards the end, and I'd be happy to get that information over to you. So let's go ahead and get started here. So talking about a presentation, once you get in the door, these are just some things that I think are important. Follow the client's lead. If they walk to the kitchen table to sit down there. If they sit down on the couch, go ahead and sit down on the couch. I think that our clients, we want to keep them, for one thing, we want to keep them in their comfort zone. We want to make sure that, honestly, they're probably used to conducting business. If they lead you to the couch and they're sitting on the couch watching TV and you just kind of follow them and they sit down there, well, to me, that means that that's where they're comfortable and that's where they're used to conducting business. So don't take them out of their comfort zone. Keep them comfortable, and you don't have to sit at the kitchen table. Unfortunately, I've been in some houses. If I asked to sit at the kitchen table, I might be there an hour and a half because they got a lot of stuff they got to clear off that table. So I have no problem just kind of following their lead and sitting down at the couch. If they want to sit down on the couch, that's where we're going to sit. This is one you've probably heard before. If you're visiting with a husband and wife, be sure that they're sitting next to each other and they aren't, you're not in between them. That can kind of just be uncomfortable. And again, we want to keep the clients comfortable, and we want the clients, especially if it's a husband and wife, we want them to be able to communicate with one another. And it's kind of hard to communicate with one another when you're sitting in between them. It may be hard for them to make a decision at the end if they don't really have that chance to be able to communicate amongst one another. So like I said, keep the client in their comfort zone. If the TV is on and it's loud, ask to turn the volume down. I don't feel like you have to ask to turn the TV off. They're comfortable conducting business, sitting on the couch with the TV on. If it's not distracting to them, it's not distracting to me. I at least want to be able to hear myself think. So if anything, if it's too loud, we can always turn it down a little bit. We can always turn the volume down a little bit so that they'll be focused on what we're there to talk about. And, this is just something that's cheesy, honestly, I think, when agents walk in and the first thing they ask is if they can take their shoes off. If you're dressed nice and your shoes are clean, I see no reason why you should have to take your shoes off. Maybe if it's raining out and your shoes are all muddy, or if you're in the snow, then yeah, be polite, ask to take your shoes off. But if like I said, if you're dressed nice, you want to stay in control. You want to be the one kind of leading and not the prospect that you're there to see, that you're there to help. And save the rapport for the end. I'm not a huge believer that you really got to build a ton of rapport. Maybe over the phone a little bit more than face to face. Face to face, I mean, they know why you're there. They filled out a form. They called in. They filled a card out and mailed it in. I mean, there's a reason that you're there, and a lot of it just has to do with them kind of taking the first step. So they know why you're there. I just don't really I feel like so many agents, you hear the same song and dance all the time. They're always taught that the first thing you need to do when you walk into the house is ask about the pictures on the wall. Oh, are those your grandkids? Like, that's the same thing that prospect has heard from like the last 10 people that have been in the house. So be different. That's kind of my whole focus, is just always trying to be a little bit different, trying to make this different than anything else that's out there. Even if they already have a final expense policy, I can figure out a way to make this different where it makes sense for them to want to do business with me. So, so bottom line, just get to the point. Like I said, they know why you're there. We can build rapport. I like to build rapport by asking questions and getting the client involved and reminding them of why this is so important. And I think that's what you'll see by going through this presentation with me this morning. It really hits home with a lot of our clients. And that's really the point. I mean, I want them to remember why this is so important. More than likely, they've probably experienced something at some point in their life where a family member or a friend had passed away. They had not prepared properly, and it affected the whole family, maybe even the whole community financially. So that's where I want to bring their mindset back to. I want them to remember those sort of events that had happened in the past. And I want them to remember that that's why they want to do this, because they don't want to put their family in that same sort of situation. So, and before we get to the presentation, for future trainings, feel free to sign up on my website, www.adambrsan.com. And you will be notified every single week of future trainings to come and what the topics will be. And 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern every Monday morning for about 45 minutes to an hour or so. So we're to the presentation. Like I mentioned, if you want a copy of this, reach out to me. I'd be happy to send you the script, and I'd be happy to send you the PDF of the presentation. I just use it right on my iPad. I have the PDF of the presentation right on my iPad, and I just kind of scroll through it right on the iPad. Makes it pretty easy. I do a lot on my iPad these days out in the field. There's really not a whole need even for like a notepad. I mean, I write the quotes down, everything just right on the iPad. So, but anyways, again, kind of like I said earlier, my whole thing is that the whole mindset of kind of reminding the client of why this is so important. So that's where I have different closing questions. First thing out of my mouth. I mean, when I first walk in, maybe a little bit of small talk. We might talk a little bit about the weather or just current events, but we keep it real basic, real simple. Like I said, they know why I'm there. So there's no reason to beat around the bush too much. First closing question. So Mary, by sending this card back to us, had you experienced a funeral lately? So that's the first thing that I ask them. And they might not really know where I'm going with it yet. But again, remember, we haven't really built a whole lot of rapport yet. So it's just, that's kind of like where I'm starting to plant the seed. Are they going to buy into what I'm there to talk about? Or are they just like, what the heck's this guy doing here? But just asking that question, I want to kind of see how they react. And if they say yes, that they had experienced a funeral, yeah, she mentions, oh yeah, my aunt died about 6 months ago. And next thing, I'm going to ask more questions. Again, I want to get them involved, and I want to remind them why this is so important. So I'm so sorry to hear that your aunt had passed. Was there insurance involved? And whether there was or no, if there was insurance, was it enough? If there wasn't insurance, did the family have to pitch in? I mean, these are things that happen when people haven't prepared properly. So these are the sort of things I want to bring up to remind them again of why this is so important. And again, so back to the script. Well, I'm sure that got you thinking about this. So what are we there to do? Well, I'm going to go over this with you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us. We'll go over a few questions, and I'll put together a few rates and see what you think. On to the presentation, and this is what the presentation looks like. This is the PDF on the right side here. And again, you can make it your own. If you're not a part of my group, you can make this your own however you want. But we're going to kind of base this off of how I present with my agency. And heck, if you want to become a part of what we're doing, reach out to me too. I'd be happy to get you involved with Unity Life Group. So Unity Life Group is the name of our company. We go by the Family Legacy Plan. And what we are is a final expense organization that focuses on working with companies who have a good track record of paying claims and paying claims quickly. So what this means to you, Mary, is that if you have a plan with us and you die, well, your family, they're going to get that money fast. And this is very important because most funeral homes want the money up front. So at least you know the money's going to be there for your family when they need it. So right there, what are we doing? We're adding value right away, and we're making this different than probably what anybody else has ever said when they walked in and talking about final expenses. I mean, how many agents, first thing they talk about is the fact that the claims are going to be paid quickly and that money's going to be there for their family right away. They're not even really thinking about that because most agents, all they're focused on is face amounts and rates. So right off the bat, we're adding a little bit of value. We're catching their attention a little bit, and they're ready to hear more. So then, remember, we really haven't built a whole lot of rapport yet. They might not really open up to me a whole lot yet, but that's when we're going to talk a little bit more about who we are. And we've been around now, our organization, for 20 years, since 2003. And we've partnered with the most financially sound companies in the industry that are in the business to pay claims. Now, just a couple of years ago, one of our partner companies paid out over 13,000 claims, totaling over $141 million in death benefits. And again, I read in the script, I like to go over this with my clients just so they have that confidence and knowing that they're working with companies that aren't afraid to pay claims. Bottom line, we want to make sure that this is going to serve its purpose. So we want to make sure that we're lining our clients up with companies that have a good history of paying claims. And if you've worked with companies that haven't done that in the past, well, you might want to look for other options out there. I mean, we want to make sure this serves its purpose. If a company takes 4 months to pay a claim, that's not a final expense company, in my opinion, because that money's not going to be there to pay for their final expenses. So, but anyways, back to the script. We are also able to help about 99% of the people we meet with. So even if you've had trouble getting coverage in the past, there's a very good chance that we will still be able to help you. This is important because this is something everybody needs. Wouldn't you agree? Right away, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody needs this. So they're selling it to themselves. And and so then we flip to the next page of the presentation. This is what they see. This is what I'm showing them here on the right side. I'm sure you know how it works with Social Security. They pay the $255, and I always say sometimes, if there's a surviving spouse or a dependent child who's in school. Now, if neither is the case, no one's getting anything. And I mean, that $255 really isn't going to do much anyways. I mean, the average funeral right now is ranging between about 4,000 and 12,000, with most falling around 11,000. Next question that I asked, does that sound accurate to you? So now the reason I ask that question, does this sound accurate to you? I kind of look at it as, remember, when I first got there, I didn't really ask them a whole lot of questions. We didn't really build a whole lot of rapport. When I asked them if they had experienced a funeral lately, again, because we hadn't built that rapport yet, they might not have opened up to me yet, and they might have just said no. It's so funny, though, that after I kind of go through some things and kind of explain who we are and what we do, they start to build up a little bit of trust. And it's so funny because people that tell you no, that they hadn't experienced a funeral at the beginning, they end up, when I ask them, does that sound accurate to you as far as the average cost of a current funeral? so many times they come back and say, oh yeah, we had to bury our Uncle Joe about 8 months ago. I think it was like around 9,000. So then what is that doing? If they're right then and there, they remembered about how much that funeral cost. That's about how much they feel like they're probably going to need for their funeral if something were to happen to them anytime soon. So that's why I asked that question, because I like to focus on the need and how much they feel like they're going to need. If something were to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, we can always go back maybe in a year and write them additional coverage. But I want to focus on the immediate need, the first visit, when I want to make that first sale. So then we flip to the next page. This is a breakdown on why funerals cost what they do. And I always say this, I don't need to bore you with this. I'm sure you know how it works. But the two main expenses, and I'm always pointing to the right here, the two main expenses are the casket and the burial vault, which is like the cement that goes in the ground before the casket. Right now, the average cost for a casket is right around $2,500. And then that burial vault, average cost is around $1,500. So right there, you're $4,000 in. That doesn't even include the opening and the closing. I'll mention to them that a lot of these cemeteries, they're wanting over $1,000 just to put a hole in the ground and cover it up. Takes them 5 minutes with a machine. I mean, right there, the casket, the vault, the opening and closing, you're $5,000 in, not even including a headstone, and all of the other expenses at the funeral home, the preparation of the body, embalming, all that stuff. So again, we're focusing on the need. We're also helping them, maybe opening their eyes a little bit to see what all these expenses are, and that's the reason why the funeral costs what it does. And then the next thing I mention is that a lot of these expenses are eliminated when people decide that they want to be cremated. So the next closing question, have you thought about whether you want to be buried or cremated? Why is that a closing question? Well, because we're focusing on the need. And again, like I mentioned, they know about how much coverage they feel like they want. I want to make sure that I get them enough for what they need. So if they want to be buried, we've already kind of talked about what those average prices are. Now, when it comes to cremation, let's say that they say, well, yeah, I want to be cremated. So then we'll go through that. And you'll see here at the bottom, we'll explain the 3 different types of cremation services. There's a direct cremation where there's really no services involved. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Usually ranges between about $1,500 and $3,000. Cremation with a memorial service, where maybe there's a service at the funeral home with like a picture. Usually runs between about maybe $4,000 to $6,000. And now we've seen where people will actually have a whole funeral service with a visitation where the family will rent a casket. The funeral home would prepare the body and all that stuff. There's a wake, just a regular, almost like a traditional funeral service. And then after the services, then, well, there's no cemetery involved. Then the person would be cremated. And I mean, I've seen services like that cost upwards of 6, 8, 10, 12,000, depending on where you go. So again, we like to focus on the need, how much coverage they're going to need. Now, another useful tool, and I'll put this in the comments here. There's a website that you can go to. It's called parting.com. And parting.com, and again, the good thing about this is that you're showing the client that the business, and your stuff. You're showing them about what the average costs are. Then we can take it a step further. We go to parting.com. You can actually plug in the zip code where they live. You can even ask them what funeral home they want to use. You can plug in whether they're going to be buried or they're going to be cremated, if there's going to be a visitation or not. And it'll show you what those funeral home prices are. Every single funeral home, at least most of them I've seen, are in there. So again, you can take it a step further. You can show them, okay, well, you're looking at Thomas's funeral home. Okay, well, it looks like for a traditional funeral, their price is around $7,700. So then right there, they know about how much it's going to cost at the funeral home that they want to use. But then you got to remind them too, that doesn't include the cemetery costs. So Again, let's focus on the need of how much coverage that they need. But like I said, you take that a little extra step there. Again, it's giving you maybe a lot more credibility and showing that client that you really know what you're doing. So then we move on. And, this is something that you can get from many different carriers out there. A pre-arrangement instruction guide. This is actually one that I use through American Amicable. So if you are an agent with them, you can reach out to their supply department and you can order some of these. They're free. They'll send you as many of them as you want. If you're not with American Amicable, let me know. I'd be happy to get you appointed with them and help you get going. But anyways, you can get these pretty much, many different carriers have them. They're a very useful tool. And again, it's adding value. And so back to the script, one thing that we've noticed is that there is so much more to when someone dies than just the money. And a lot of the time, the family's left clueless with not really knowing exactly how the person who had passed away would have wanted things done. That is why we are going to provide you with one of these pre-arrangement instruction guides. It's almost like an instruction manual that you can fill out and leave to your loved ones so they know exactly how you want things done. This is going to make things so much easier on your family when the time comes, and they're really going to appreciate you doing this for them ahead of time. It could also prevent an argument when people are grieving, frustrated, and upset. So like I mentioned, it's just something that is adding some value, and it's something where the client, a lot of times it's so funny. It's just a piece of paper. I'll have a client tell me, wow, my other insurance doesn't do this. This is really nice. So again, it's adding that value and it's making them feel like they're not just taking out another insurance policy. We're helping them put everything in order ahead of time. And then we're just going to kind of go through it. I'm not going to leave this there and help them fill it out or anything. This is just something that I'm going to leave behind for them should they decide to move forward with me. So the first page, it goes over your personal information, where you were born, where you worked, and other information that is useful to help your family put your obituary together. I hate to say it too, but so many times people are forgotten about, where they find out 6 months later about a family member or friend passing. You can list those people in here and be sure to let your family know to contact them. Then those people at least have the opportunity to decide how they want to handle the situation. It also goes over information for the funeral service. If there's a church involved, if you want a favorite scripture read or hymn sung. And then the next page goes over all of your important documents that you may have and where they're located. I think it's a good idea to put down any insurance policies that you may have with the policy number and the phone numbers. I sometimes wonder how many insurance policies go unclaimed because the family has trouble locating the policy and not knowing the company that it is with. At least by putting the information down here, your family will have easy access to that information. And then at the bottom here, I will also include my name and phone number. So your family will know that they need to contact me right away when that time comes. And I'll make sure to get the claim started quickly. And as soon as the claim is processed and approved, we can either overnight a check or we can deposit the money to your benefit into your beneficiary's bank account. So they're going to get that money right away to take care of anything that needs to be taken care of. We prefer sending the money to your family because there are more expenses than just the expenses at the funeral home. And sometimes we found that the funeral home will try and use up all the money if it's sent to them. So, we want to make sure this money is going to be there for your family to take care of everything and not just the funeral home expenses. I mean, there could be cemetery costs. A lot of times there's like a luncheon or like a repast afterwards. I mean, all those things cost money. So we want to make sure your family has money for all that. So then that's really the purpose of this. That's why most people contact us. They're looking out for their family and they don't want to put them in a tough situation. I'm sure that's what got you thinking about this too. And then we just kind of move on. So now we talk about the affordable solution. Well, everything we talked about, it's all done with permanent whole life protection. It's not a term policy. A lot of plans you get in the mail are term policies where once you turn a certain age, your coverage stops. And I might even mention, I've seen plans where you turn 80 years old, they cancel you. This is whole life, so you are covered forever. Your benefits, they never decrease, and your premiums, they never increase. Also important. Some companies, they might start you real low just to get you in, and then every few years, they're going to raise those rates where it could get to the point where it's just not affordable. We want to make sure that you're always able to afford this. So basically, the way this starts is the way that it finishes. The rates are locked in. You never have to worry about them going up. We cannot cancel you due to your age or your health changing. And, rates are just based off of your age and your health today. We try our best, too, to find a plan where we can get you covered from the very first day. A lot of these plans out there, they make people wait a couple years. So we want to do what we can to try to find you a plan where we can get you covered from the very first day. And there's no medical exams. So, you don't have to worry about anyone coming back to take your blood or make you pee in a cup or anything. And a lot of times they might laugh. Qualifications are just based off of a few quick questions. So, and I wanted to stop real quick because there is a lot to this. I mean, the script, there's a lot of words involved. What I would recommend to do is take it apart and learn it in pieces. For instance, I actually, you guys might not know this, but I'm actually a musician as well. I've played the piano since I was like 5 years old. And my teacher, I remember when I got going, our focus was on memorizing the music. And I mean, there might be a piece that I was trying to learn that was like 10 pages long. There's no way that you can memorize a piece of music if you started at the beginning and you just try to play it all the way through. There's just no way it's going to happen. I would take it apart in pieces. I would maybe pick out a section 1 and I would learn that whole section. And then I would take section 2 and I would learn that section. And then I would learn those 2 sections together. And so on and so forth, all the way until I had that whole piece done, section 1 through 10. So that's what I would recommend to do to memorize a script, is to take it apart in pieces. Learn the first page, then learn the second page, put the first 2 together, then move on to the third, and then put those 3 together, then move on to the fourth. Sooner or later, you'll have the whole thing memorized. It'll be smooth and it'll be fluent, where it just sounds like you're talking, like you're not just reading a script. And also too, I mean, I throw all of my content on YouTube. You can listen to this recording while you're driving around even. That'll help you memorize it too. The more you hear it, the better you're going to get at it. So those are just a couple recommendations I'd like to make to you when it comes to helping to maybe simplify memorizing a script. Because again, it is a little lengthy, but again, once you get the hang of it, it really works. I'm telling you, I've been using this script for years and I've made a ton of sales. So now we are to the underwriting. The next question that I asked. So would you say you're in pretty good health? I always say that. I don't care if they have 20 medications sitting in a shoebox next to them on a table. I always just ask them, so would you say you're in pretty good health? And if all those medications are sitting there, they're usually going to look at me and laugh and be like, not really. Or maybe they are in good health if there aren't a bunch of medications sitting there. But anyways, they're going to tell you about their health. Yeah, I have high blood pressure. I had cholesterol. I had a stroke 6 months ago. I have congestive heart failure, whatever. They're open to telling you about their health. At that time, I'm really just making notes. I'm making notes, writing down what they tell me. And then I ask about their medications. So what medications are you taking? Do you have a list that maybe you could provide to me? A lot of times their doctor will provide them with a list where I can just kind of look down that list. And I mean, I can see just kind of right off of that list, which would be their best place to qualify them with which company. But ask them if they have a list. If not, maybe they can just run and grab all their medications for you. Write down all the meds. And then from there, you got to do your job when it comes to the different carriers that you're working with to see who they'll qualify with, who gives them the best option. If maybe one company will insure them from the very first day, but others won't. Those are the sort of things that I'm focused on. I do have a go-to carrier, that I kind of lead with, where if they will qualify with them, that's where I'm going to go. But if I know if I can get them first day coverage somewhere else, well, then I'm usually going to go that route. So, and another thing that's been helpful for me, and I talked about this a lot, that insurance toolkits. It's like the cost of a lead a month. It's like $40 a month, but it's helped me to make a heck of a lot more money because I've made a lot more sales because it's a very useful tool. You can plug in all the medications in there and it's going to give you the best options. But if you know your lead carrier, like I said, I kind of focus on the lead carrier. If I know that they're not going to qualify there, well, then I'm going to shift gears and then I'm going to start plugging stuff into the toolkit to kind of see who would provide them with the best options. So, again, take notes, figure out who the best option would be. The goal is to try to find them first day coverage. And then go through all the health questions. They might show you all their meds and everything might look good. And then you start asking them the health questions and you find out a lot more. So be sure to go through the health questions. Most companies' health questions are pretty comparable. I don't feel like you have to go through one if they don't qualify, go through all the questions on another. You can kind of figure out, just kind of based off of the one application that you're reading off the questions, which company that they probably will qualify or get the best option to write a policy with. So then the next closing question, do you have any coverage now? And if they say, yes, I do, I always say, great. So you're looking to add to what you have of affordable. I'm shaking my head yes. They're shaking their head yes too. Or I might say, so you're just basically looking for something that's going to cover you immediately, or you're looking for something that is going to pay the claim quickly. Like I mentioned, a lot of times our clients will use this policy to cover all of their immediate expenses. We don't know about their other policy, how long it's going to take to pay out, but I know that our policies are going to pay out quickly to be there for the family when they need it. So then again, that's another thing I'm doing to kind of separate what I'm doing from any other policy that they might already have. Okay, well, that makes sense. I don't even need to let the funeral home know about my other policy. I'll just use this one to pay for my funeral. I'll give the other policy to my grandkids, whatever. So if you say, do you have any coverage now? And they tell you no, like it says here in red, act like they're the last person in the world who doesn't have a policy. Wow. No wonder you contacted us then. This is important. And that's how I say it. And it is, because it's true. It is important. They need this. And you need to be like expressive like that, or maybe they won't realize how important that it is. Again, they need it. I think they know that they need it, but it takes someone like us to show up and say, hey, it's time to just get this done and make them realize how important that this is. So, and then next, let's talk about affordability. Again, I like to focus on the need. I like to focus on affordability. To me, those are the two most important things. How much coverage do I feel they need based on whether they want to be buried or cremated, and how much can they afford? So affordability is important too. Now, at this point, I've already kind of gone through on the rate calculator, kind of figured out who they're going to qualify with. I kind of know about how much it's going to be. But before I show them the quotes, I always ask them, now affordability is important. You want this to be there for your family when they need it. And if you don't keep up with it, it's not going to be. So have you thought, and this is kind of like a run-on question, I guess you could say, it's a run-on sentence or run-on question, because there's a question mark, but before I give them a chance to answer the first question, I'm already throwing numbers at them. So this is basically the way I do it. Have you thought about affordability monthly? Is $80 to $90 a month affordable, or is that outrageous? And just kind of see what they say. They might say that 80 to 90 would be affordable. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put together 3 quotes that are between 80 and 90 a month, because I know based on their needs that should be enough to cover everything. If I say is 80 to 90 affordable, or is that outrageous? And they're like, wow, that's just way too high. I can't afford that. How about 70 to 80 a month? See how they react. If they still like, no, that's just too much. How about 60 to 70? How about 50 to 60? Sooner or later, they're going to tell you what they can afford. What are we doing by asking them that question now of what's affordable? Well, when we get to the end and I show them the quotes, they can't come back and tell me that everything looks good, but they just don't know if they can afford it. I've already broken that down. They've already told me what they can afford. They can afford 50 to 60 a month. So, and again, even if the 50 to 60 a month isn't enough to pay for everything, well, I always tell them, I'm sure you would agree, having a little something's better than not having anything at all. You can always increase it later, but I'm sure your family will appreciate that you were at least able to do something for them. And that's kind of how I handle it. But something's better than not having anything. So then from there, let's just say that they told me that 60 to 70 a month was affordable, and that's kind of at their age where this kind of put them. So I just did 10,000, 12,500, and 15. This would more than likely be based off of like a traditional burial. So a $10,000 plan is going to run $64.30 a month. And at that point, I want to just kind of see how they react before I just throw another quote in front of them. If they say anything like, that sounds good, or all right, yeah, I think we can do that, I'm not even going to put another quote together. What's the point? They've just sold themselves. So if they say anything like, that sounds good, or any kind of buying signal, the next thing out of my mouth, down at the bottom here, final closing question: who's your beneficiary going to be? And we just proceed to filling out the application. I'm not even going to put together 2 more quotes. There's no point. But if I say 10,000 is going to run $64 a month and they don't say anything, well, then I'm going to move on and I'm going to give them another quote. Okay, well, 12,500, that's going to run $72.50 a month, and then 15,000, a little bit more than what you said that you could afford, but that's going to run about $83.60 a month. At that point, same thing. If they say that sounds good, or yeah, let's do that, whatever, any kind of buying signal, next thing out of my mouth, who's your beneficiary going to be? If they don't say anything, again, if you're writing them down on a piece of paper, you could rip that piece of paper out, turn it around, put it in front of them. I do it on my iPad. I just turn the iPad around, I put it in front of them, and then I just simply say, I'll let you tell me what's affordable. And as it says in red here, shut your mouth. First one to talk loses. And I don't care if you got to sit there for 5 minutes. Don't say a word. Sit there and let them look at it. Sooner or later, they're going to come up with a decision or a rejection that you're going to have to, or an objection that you're going to, that you're going to have to overcome. But again, don't say anything else. Just sit there, be quiet. Sooner or later, they're going to make that decision. And when they do, next words out of your mouth, who is your beneficiary going to be? And then we write that down. We proceed to filling out the application. Now, once we get to the bottom of the app and we need to get the banking information, to me, I keep it simple. People these days, I would say most bills are done that way. You don't need to over-explain it. I mean, I've heard agents say stuff like, yeah, we're going to be getting into your account every month on the 3rd. What do you mean you're going to be getting into my account? Nobody's getting into my account. Like, it's how you present it. So I keep it real simple. This is on a bank draft. What's a good date? If they say anything other than the 1st or the 3rd, well, then maybe I'll say something. If they say like the 5th or something, I might say, well, are you on Social Security? When do you get your deposit? Because more than likely, if they're telling me the 5th, it's because they're getting their check either on like the 1st or the 3rd, and they just want to give it a few extra days. Well, most companies, we don't need to give it a few extra days, because if the 3rd falls on the weekend, well, the client, they're going to receive that money on the last business day prior to the weekend, and we can actually set up the bank draft with most companies to coincide with their Social Security, the true Social Security billing. So I don't want to give them a few extra days. If I just write down the 5th of the month on the app and they get paid on the 3rd, well, heck, if that money came before the weekend, there's a chance that they ran to the bank and they pull out all their money. And when we try to draft that payment on Monday, it's not going to be there. So I want to make sure to draft that payment the same day that they're getting their Social Security. If they tell you to draft it on the 15th of the month, I would say, well, when do you get paid? Do you get paid like on the 2nd Wednesday? Because that's probably what they're thinking. I usually get paid the middle of the month. don't just put down the 15th. Ask them, do you get paid like the second Wednesday? Or if they tell you the 21st, do you get paid on the third Wednesday? More than likely, that's probably when they're getting paid, but they just don't realize that you could actually set it for that exact day. At least with most companies, you could set it for like the second, third, or fourth Wednesday. But just a few little extra tips there. But that's the only time I say anything other than this is on a bank draft. What's a good date? And that's just if they're not giving me the date that makes sense. Well, then we gotta explain to them why we need to set it for when they receive their Social Security. That's going to help with persistency as well and helping you keep your business on the books. So then at that point, I mean, everything is pretty much done. And now we can relax and get referrals. And the way I ask for referrals, I look at it this way. I just help them with something that they needed. They appreciate that I was able to help them. A lot of times they feel like I'm actually going to get something out of it. If they give me some names, they'll be more willing to help me. So back to the script. You may wonder how I get paid. Well, I get paid two ways. One, most importantly, with meeting you today, I get paid a commission based on you keeping this policy in force. So please be serious about your decision today. So right there, I'm securing the sale. The second way I get paid is by getting 5 names from you of people you think might be interested in what we talked about today. I'm not talking about 5 people that will buy insurance today, just 5 people you think may be interested in what we talked about. So, and it's true, I am going to get paid. By them giving me 5 names, I'm going to make a few sales. So, but again, by them giving me those names that they feel like I'm actually going to get paid or get something out of it, they're actually more willing to give me those names because I was just able to help them with something that they needed, and they're happy that I was able to help them, and now they're willing to help me. So, and then don't forget, you can't just walk out of the house and not explain if the policy is going to be modified. What we mean by that, if there's going to be like that 2-year waiting period, there's different ways to handle that. I usually handle it before I have a foot out the door. Now, because of your congestive heart failure, the company wants you to live 2 years. What that means is if something happens to you in the first 2 years of the policy due to natural causes, your beneficiary will get back every penny you gave us plus 10% interest. Better than risky stock or a savings account. So good news is you don't lose a dime by funding this policy, and you're going to live 2 years anyways. And, like I said, I mean, I've done that. Even I'll walk into a house and they'll tell me I don't want to do anything. If this is one of those policies where I am not covered for the first 2 years, I don't even want it. And I go through it and I explain it and I make a big deal out of their health issue. Wow, have you been declined before? You have congestive heart failure. I would imagine it's been very difficult to get coverage. But when I'm able to actually insure them and help them, well, then they're happy. I mean, you could do status with something as simple as diabetes or even high blood pressure. You put at least a little bit of doubt in their mind. But again, conditions that are going to put it to modified, you can't just walk out and not tell them about the 2-year wait. I usually don't use the term 2-year waiting period either. That's a term that they hear a lot. It's kind of a turnoff. We just want to make sure you live a couple years. Or you could even say, 24 months. Sometimes I say that 24 months maybe sounds a little bit better than 2 years because I hear 2 years all the time. And I'll usually relate back to especially right now. I mean, we are in the middle of September. I mean, I feel like we just celebrated New Year's. So, I mean, time goes so fast anyways. So before you know it, I mean, you'd be past that couple years anyways. And they're like, yeah, you're right. That makes sense. You're right, man. This time just flies by. And I tell them, 24 months, so I tell them, again, the time goes by so fast. But if you put this off that 2-year clock, you're just putting that 2-year clock off from getting started. We want to make sure that we get past that. So that's why you don't want to wait anyways. But very seldom do I honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time I wrote a policy and they turned me away because I told them about this. And I think it's because of how I do it. I don't bring it up until the app's already done. They could tell me before I have a foot out the door, never mind, I don't want it then. But they don't. They're okay with it then. So then if you like what you heard today, and again, if you're looking for new opportunities, check us out, Unity Life Group. I'm the owner, been in the business 20 years. We got a lot of good things going right now. We have in-home sales, telesales. We got a lead program. We have lead financing. I know a lot of agents out there that have trouble when it comes to paying for leads, especially if they're coming from an opportunity where they weren't making a lot of money. So, we can put a steady flow of leads in your hands. I got agents right now. They're taking 30 leads every single week, and they're putting up some pretty good numbers, and they don't even have to worry about paying for those leads up front. So, if that's something you're interested in too, feel free to reach out to us. Great opportunities here to build a team, lots of room to build and grow. And, we're working with multiple carriers. I don't feel like you need a ton, but we have them if you need them. And we also have high-level contracts available for those that are building and maybe need room to put some agents under them. For other training, check out adambrsan.com and also my YouTube. Again, I throw this content on YouTube. Probably by the end of the day today, it'll be on there. So feel free to check it out. Thanks again for coming on this morning. Doesn't look like I have any questions. Appreciate you guys coming on. And like I mentioned, feel free to reach out to me. That is my email, my direct line as well. And I'd be happy to send you that script along with the PDF of the presentation that I use. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks again.